Welcome to Bartolomeo Meo Mugiwara fans. I had this analysis pending, probably the only one about a place, but it is a place that is clear that it is very special. Probably the most special in this world of One Piece. So much so that we heard about Wano like 600 chapters ago, in Thriller Bark, and Oda has already said that by the end of this arc, the One Piece will already look within reach. So now that Kaido, who was the strongest creature in the world, has just been defeated, it seems that if I don't upload it now, I will never do it. By the way, Kaido also explained that he was in Wano because it was special. And it really seems like it is. It's clearly linked to the Ancient Kingdom and the Void Century. That has even mean that there is now at least one character that comes from that time. A Joy Boy's Nakama in the form of a huge elephant with long legs, Sunisha. This when we are still to see if Toki might appear from the past. But let's look at the place itself. It is made up of several islands, with a different season on each one, which have been put together in an apparently artificial way. And how have they come together? Well, we know that ancient giants could move islands, and if they explained that to us, and besides, we have an ancient giant school in Onigashima, it seems that that should be the explanation. But it is not the only one. We have already seen other abilities that are able to do something like this, even in this same arc, like with Kaido and Momonosuke's dragons. And it was not just about putting islands together. These islands also seem to be in a natural fortress, as Kaido already pointed out. And natural come in quotes because we are talking about a high circular wall around it that only allows access in very controlled and hidden ways. And in fact, since the country was closed after the Void Century, it has been forbidden to leave it. And one reason for this might be to keep the secret of how to enter and maybe some other that we will see. But talking about the country having difficult access, things are not just limited to those high walls. We have a special weather that makes navigation very difficult to even reach that wall, and a very particular sea made up of fresh water and with many whales. The very peculiar access to the country is a waterfall, and the way to save it is based on the same legend of the Kaido's Fruit, the carp that tries to climb the waterfall and in the end becomes a dragon. And it is the second time that we have related the dragon fruit with Wano, so we will see if it really ends up playing a role in the story, especially with Momonosuke having, or if it is left as a coincidence. But that waterfall doesn't behave naturally either, as there isn't enough water above to support it and the current of the water goes against logic, going towards the waterfall instead of away from it. It's not that I'm being too picky about the design here. The characters themselves comment on these details upon arrival, so it sounds like we should end up having an explanation. The only option I see is for the waterfall to feed back. I mean, the water that falls and the one that arises from the direction of the sea is sucked under the waterfall, which would explain the two directions of the water, and is added to the one that fills that huge container that forms that circular wall so the water keeps falling and the waterfall does not stop. Whoever managed to climb the waterfall is received by a huge whale that swallows the visitors, who ends up on Kuri Beach without remembering how they got there. That this is part of the entry system is shown by the fact that the same octopus that summoned the carps that were necessary to get there was in charge of preventing Luffy from leaving the ship and making sure that he was swallowed by the whale. However, this is not the only entrance. On the opposite side of this fortress there is another waterfall through which there is a path to a harbor. As you can see, that other entrance is behind Onigashima and allows a ship to pass under the island and the sea until it reaches a port with an elevator to the surface. Here, there is no doubt that it is artificial, right? Well, it's hard to think that the rest isn't either. Rather, it seems like a system designed to isolate the country, including the weather. I already discussed the Ancient Kingdom's ability to modify the weather when I talk about how they created the Camp Belt and the existence of sky islands like Guaderia that basically take care of that. And knowing that those on that island were from Birka, their relationship with the former inhabitants of the moon is served. And thanks to the fact that this analysis has been delayed until almost the end of the arc, it has allowed me to have a possible explanation for the peculiar design of the country. But first, let's think about how this country was born. It could be that it already existed before the Ancient Kingdom and that their relationship arose after. But it is not what I think. It seems to me more that the country was created by those who came from the moon, like so, with whom they've been having a link for centuries. There are several details that make me think like this. The fauna of Wano, for example. We have seen animals with a flaming hair like the one of Sulong and Nika. We also have that if each island with its own climate had assigned a family that ruled it, and who ruled in the central island was the shogun of the entire country, let's take a look at these families to see if they might be related to the former people of the moon. For this, it is important to know the kanji for moon, which is this, and which is generally read as Tsuki. And now let's see what the Japanese names of these families mean. The Kotsuki were assigned the main island, residing in the flower capital, and those chosen to rule the country, with privileged information about the ancient kingdom like the language of the poneglyphs, which are responsible for passing from generation to generation. In Hakumai, the Shimotsuke rule, like Yasuye. It is also the family of Ryuma, Kuina, and Kosaburo, the forger of Emma, whom Zoro met as a child in his East Blue village. Curiously, Ringo was also ruled by another Shimotsuki, Ushimaru, but there is a family that seems to have left Wano during the Void Century, since that is where Amatsuki Toki came from, saying that she had never been in Wano, but that her parents were from there. Udon's daimyo was Usuki Tempura, and Kibi's was Fugetsu Omusubi. And there is another island left without a ruler, Kuri, and another family without a territory because they were cancelled after an attempt of getting the rule of the country by killing the other daimyos, Kurosumi. You may have already noticed that most of the family names have the kanji for moon in them. So we have Kotsuki, Bright Moon, Shimotsuki, Frost Moon, Amatsuki, Heavenly Moon, Utsuki, Rainy Moon, Fugetsu, Windy Moon, and is that the kanji can also be read as Getsu, and finally Kurosumi, Black Charcoal. Wow, who would have figured out that this one would be the traitor one? We have already highlighted the role of the Kosugi with the poneglyphs. Another essential role left to them is to have Sunisha at their command. And we have recently seen that this role has to do with opening Wano, since Sunisha came and as soon as Momonosuke told him that he is not going to open the country yet, Sunisha answered like, "Gotcha, bye," and disappeared. It should be pointed out here that the Gorosei also knows about this, and when they are informed that Sunisha has left, they say that this means that they are not going to open the country, and that since it is a fortress, they won't be able to attack it. So, what exactly is opening Wano Country? It must be more than just removing the law that prevents the citizens from leaving the country, because Sunisha is not needed for that at all. It seems that Momonosuke has learned what it is from reading Oden's diary. Let's review this fortress. If we look at the map and taking into account the latest revelations, we have this formation like a bowl full of fresh water that overflows, creating waterfalls that are another obstacle to access to the country. And in its center emerges a volcano whose design stands out by being peculiarly tall and narrow. We also have an island that was separated from the rest of the country and has now been moved into its interior. It is the Onigashima Island. But Iso already told us that it has changed its name. Onigashima literally means Island of the Oni, or of the Onis. Both are equally valid in its Japanese name. In the manga it was not clear, but the anime shows us that it is Iso who tells us that the name has changed and makes it clear that it had to be Kaido, the one who changed it. In his conversation with Yamato, he showed signs of being proud of being an Oni and the importance of that. We have no clues about what was its name before, but I bet the name must have been related to its role in that complex system that we can see that is Wano. Another thing that doesn't quite add up to me is the behavior of the magma. After the defeat of Kaido and Big Mom, who have been sunk underground, on the map we can see a zone of magma that, according to what we know of tectonic plates, is too close to the surface, practically at the level of the seabed. After the arrival of the two former Yonkos in that area, it seems that there was some excitement in the magma that formed an eruption in the part where Onigashima was. If we were dealing with a normal eruption, it would have come out of the tunnel that it already has instead of creating a new one. If we consider that the two holes through which the Yonkos have arrived are too small, we still have a volcano there, which hasn't been affected and is where logic says the eruption should have happened. So we have mysteries to solve in Wano and some things that don't quite add up. In this last chapter we have had several revelations, but perhaps the most surprising one is that the ancient weapon Pluton is in Wano. We know that Pluton is a ship capable of destroying an entire island. When Tom showed the blueprints of the weapon to Iceberg and Frankie, they reacted terrified, saying if building something like that was even possible. And Tom replies that it is the worst monster in the history of shipwriting. How can such a ship be? Here, we shouldn't think of cannons, however powerful they might be. It appears to be a monstrous ship with a weapon capable of destroying an island. Where could there be such a thing in Wano? If we go back to the map, and if by monstrous we understand that it has to be much larger than a regular ship, which seems to be necessary to be able to attack an island for more than just its coast, it is clear that it cannot be on the surface, since it would be visible to everyone, right? Or can be? Because when I look at this map and try to imagine it on 3D, I find a certain resemblance to a boat. Closed at all 365 degrees and with something tall and narrow in the center as of a mast. So I'm going to defend my theory that Pluton is what we have in front of us, the fortress that we call as Wano Country. And I'm going to defend it with what I have already pointed out previously. Without doubt, something like this does deserve the adjective monstrous. A ship the size of a country seems like the right size to destroy an island, right? For those who find the size too much, let's remember that we have already seen ships the size of islands in One Piece, with, for example, Thriller Bark or the Noah. But where I really find a clue is in the behavior of one of those who saw what Pluton was and called it monstrous, Iceberg. Having seen the blueprints for something like that, when looking for a solution for the problem caused by the Aqua Laguna in Water 7, Iceberg gets to work on the project of turning the entire island into a ship. So he knows how to do that. And watch out, because the other apprentice was Frankie. He will clearly have a role to play here, and if anyone wonders why Frankie hasn't recognized Pluton, I'll tell you that it's the most normal. The structure of the ship is hidden in the landscape, and being inside it and not knowing that you have to look for it is practically impossible to notice that it might be what he saw years ago. It also makes sense that Sunisha would be needed to release such a structure, and it seems easy to imagine so as a crane, right? I do see it. And there is something more. If we believe that the entire country is capable of sailing and we have the ship there, we still have something very important to clarify, and it is that they explained to us that Pluton was a ship giving details to what we already knew it was, an ancient weapon. It is a weapon, and a very powerful one, and the fact that it can navigate does nothing to disregard. What can be that weapon that can destroy entire islands? Well, given that we have to look for something more powerful and with more range than cannons, it is time to go back to talk about that magma that is too close to the surface, because there could be an explanation if that magmatic mass were part of the ship and could be used as a weapon. It occurs to me that this narrow version of Mount Fuji gives a suitable design to bend the artifact to shoot the magma. Do you think it's used for decoration? Neither in the present nor in flashbacks have someone been close to the mountain. Don't you think that a volcano has the capacity to destroy an island? They have done it for millennia, and they have also created them. In this way, Pluton would be a vessel capable of moving a volcano at will. And if on top of that we imagine a system to be able to move the moon itself to be able to point wherever you want, then we would have something similar to a monstrous weapon capable of destroying entire islands. It might not be exactly like that in the end, but it is a possibility that fits. It is not clear to me what the role of that branch that ended with Onigashima is and where the eruption came from. Maybe it was the safety, since all the part is being destroyed, but it could have another function, the one that could be related with the former name of the island. I'm glad I put off this review of Wano Country because it has allowed me to also be a review of the ancient weapon Pluton. I hope you like the theory, and if so, we will probably meet in some other video. See ya!